Hal, Doug Ladnier, and Mark. I would just sit, up here. I'm hearing Mark and Doug sing that, and I'm thinking, boy, we could do an Old Man River. That would be fabulous between the two of you guys, huh? Well, good morning. And today we conclude our series on the seat of the soul, but I hope you continue with the book if you haven't finished it, because it really is a great resource for the spiritual student. Gary Zukov, who wrote the book, as I mentioned pretty much every week, but I know there's new people every week, you may know him through the Oprah show. He was on 36 times. He was on almost as much as Oprah for a while there. But she obviously saw great value in what he brought to the table. And what he brings to the table, I think, is a spiritual approach to life that is grounded in principle, the principles both of East and West and so forth, and the principles of understanding psychology. So it's a very compatible message to what we bring in our teaching and in the science of mind. So the fourth section we'll talk about tonight is called Power. And the chapters are Psychology, Illusion, Power, and Trust. And as always, I'm kind of giving you a condensed Reader's Digest version. Does anybody still know what Reader's Digest is? Because I realize that may be a little outdated. Yeah, Cliff Notes maybe would be better, but we take a slice and try to illuminate it somewhat for you. In the section on psychology, Gary says, because psychology is based upon the perceptions of the fine sensory personality, it's not able, or five sensory, it should be five, not fine, it is not able to recognize the soul. Psychology itself is basically about our thinking aspects. I don't agree that it doesn't recognize the soul. I agree much of it doesn't. But I think Jungian and some of the other approaches certainly do more and more. And I added a quote here from Paul Tillich, who is a pretty well-known theologian. And he says, the difficult truth to learn is that the true change takes place in the imagination, and knowing this has everything to do with developing a good, intimate relationship to our own soul and the souls of others. So the idea of our imagination, that conscious psychological process that enables us to envision, to see what's possible, to think about what's possible, to visualize it, and to feel it, is all part of that imaginal process. And that is what creates our relationship with everything, with our own interiority, and with those around us. We are, as Gary has talked about throughout the book, we are souls coming into contact for the purpose of what he would say healing, but healing is really, it doesn't necessarily mean anything's necessarily wrong. Something can be healed when it's taken to a higher level. It's about, I think our soul's journey is to, as I mentioned during the meditation, to realize more and more of the infinite that life has to offer. That's why we're here, I think. I think we're here to live fully as we can. And that does require engagement with life around us. When we withhold, usually we withhold because we feel fear, we feel inadequate, we feel diminished, and we stay in a container. And in doing so, we may feel protected, but we're also denying not only the world what we have to offer, we're denying ourselves the engagement with the world. It would be sort of like, if you imagine the analogy of all of us humans being cells in humanity. Imagine all the cells in your body. You want all your cells to be fully engaged, don't you? You don't want a bunch of cells in your brain to say, okay, we're shutting down, we don't feel good, we're not going to play. Because you want access to all of the potential, all of the good that your physical being can bring you. What's the same, I think, with humanity, the whole consciousness of humanity. In order for it to be effective and function at its highest level, everybody has to engage from the best part of their being. And I think our experience as human beings on the planet continues to be a struggle to realize that. You don't have to look very far, turn on the news and there's your prayer list. But it's also a recognition that on an individual level, many of us are in conflict within ourselves. How could we not express conflict on the outer if it's there on the inner? So the imagination, the psychological aspect of the imagination, is the key to moving from where you are in consciousness to where you would choose to be. And we need to learn how to use that tool very effectively. to master, if you will, the capacity to use our thought to generate a consciousness of receptivity to more and more and more good. That doesn't mean more stuff. It means more good. What is your good? You know, the great Emma Curtis Hopkins said, "There is good for me and I ought to have it." What a great affirmation every day. There is. There is good for you and you ought to have it. And the only thing stopping us from having it is that somewhere inside we've decided we shouldn't have it, or can't have it, or don't deserve it. And that becomes our limitation and our obstacle. James Hollis, a Jungian psychologist, says the question of the second half of life is, what does the psyche or soul ask of me? What is your inner self, that deepest part of you, what is it longing for? What does it want you to do, be, and have in this world at the deepest level of your being? And for some of us, that's hard to dissociate from what society expects of us, or what we think our parents expected of us, or what our kids expect of us. But if you can just go within and really work on creating a connection, an invitation to connect with that deeper truth of your being, that what we would call your authentic self, what would the message be? And what it wants is very simple. It wants to live more fully as you, whoever you are. It wouldn't be the same answer for all of us in terms of the what. But in terms of the expanse of the answer, I think it would be the same. I want it all. I want everything that will help me to live more fully, whatever that is. I want rich relationships. I want all of the enabling energies. Good health, money. Money's an enabling energy that puts you at choice. Have enough to do whatever it is that you're called to do. Don't need it all. You know, matter of fact, too much becomes a burden. Too much of anything becomes a burden. I want to have the balance of just right so I can move fluidly through my life. So I want to have health so I can move around, and I want to have a healthy mind so I can think clearly. I want to have a healthy emotional self. I want to have good relationships and be discerning about who I get into relationship with. You know, I want to learn to say no in service to my greater purpose. I was reading a quote the other day: the difference between really successful people and successful people is that really successful people say no 10 times as much as successful people, because they're so tuned in to what it is they want, and they're not going to be distracted from that. You know, how many of us are afraid to say no because we might miss something? You know, that's usually due to a lack of clarity. So you end up getting kind of mired into all the yeses and the commitments that you've made, and it doesn't necessarily serve you. Gary says, power is energy that is formed by the intention of the soul. It is energy that is focused and directed toward the tasks of the soul upon the earth. So when we talk about power as a divine principle, power is, you know, the light I talked about in the meditation speaks to this. It's the animating energy of the universe. We know scientifically that we are made of the same stuff that everything else in the universe is made of. Everything in the universe, no matter how far away you go, the laws of physics are the same. The materials used in construction are the same. It's all the same. And somehow, through some act of creation, through some act of creative genius, your soul, the essential element of you, gathers to you whatever you need in terms of physical elements to have a body and to maintain that body and to continually attract and shed atoms and molecules and stuff. The room's full of stuff that we've all been shedding. Just the way it is. It's a cooperative universe. Deepak Chopra talks about the idea of the quantum field, and the quantum field is like a flat field of all energy. And underneath it, what scientists tell us, underneath the quantum field is a thin layer of intelligence. And you are a disturbance in the quantum field. Because if your individualized intelligence hadn't coalesced into you, the atoms that exist in you would just be laying somewhere else. When you become a disturbance in a field, you attract the material necessary to have a body. How do we do this? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. But we do it. There's physical evidence that we do it. You know? The soul, that is, the reason the soul did that was to have the experience of being human. The soul of your cat is having the experience of being a cat. And so forth. You know? To have the experience of being human. And what's the point of being human if you're only going to do it half-assed? That's a good question. Am I doing it full-assed or half-assed? Am I living life as fully as I can? And it doesn't mean you have to be going all the time. It means that your temperament and your internal sense of who you are should feel in balance and feel enriched by the way that you choose to live your life. For one person, that may be curled up with a good book on every occasion possible. For another one, it may be climbing Mount Everest. And both are an appropriate expression of the genius within. So it's not like, see, that's the problem. We can look to others for inspiration, but we don't want to copy others because it's unlikely that what someone else is doing is your answer. You know, so it's like what I look for is people that are expressing their energy really well. I remember going to see Michael Beckwith speak for the first time maybe 10 years ago now, 12 years ago. And I was so impressed with his energy, the way he communicates. And I thought, well, I can't copy that. I'd look like an idiot. If you don't know Michael, he sort of does a African-American Baptist kind of a style. You know, I'd look like a fool doing that. Might be entertaining, but it probably wouldn't be inspiring. But what I had learned from a previous teacher was, notice how someone like that expresses energy. What would that level of energy look like coming through you? See? So you might notice someone that's really compassionate. And you notice they have a really good touch with people. They're very good at people relating to them well. Okay, what would that energy look like coming through me? Someone who's really good at writing or someone who's really good at something, whatever it is that you would seek to be doing, what would that look like as me? And you sit back and just visualize the whole thing. See? That's what your soul wants. Your soul wants to be inspired by the world around you and modeled so that you can create your own unique version of being alive. I want to do a little reading here because it was too big for a slide. This is from the chapter on power. There is a continual energy exchange between souls. This exchange is splintered when the personality is splintered. Energy and power leaves a splintered personality through each of its different parts. If one part of you fears the loss of your job, and another fears the loss of a relationship, and another dreads confrontation with an unpleasant coworker, power flows from you without your conscious control. This is how the energy dynamics of an unempowered personality work. When your energy leaves you in fear or distrust, it cannot bring you anything but discomfort or pain. When energy flows from your system in fear or distrust, you experience a physical feeling of pain or discomfort in the part of your body that is associated with the particular energy center that is losing power. When you fear for your ability to protect and care for yourself in the world, to pay your rent, for example, or to keep yourself safe from physical or emotional harm, when you see a power as external and you feel that you do not have enough of it to ensure your well-being or your safety, you experience discomfort or pain in the area of your stomach, in the area of your solar plexus. What we call anxiety is the experience of power leaving through the energy center that is located in this area of the body. An anxiety attack is a massive loss of power from your system through that energy center. Power losses affect the surrounding parts of the body. Power loss through this center, for example, can cause indigestion. If it's chronic or acute, it can ulcerate the stomach. When you fear that your ability to love or to be loved is threatened, when you fear, for example, expressing your own love or receiving love from another, you experience physical discomfort or pain in the region of your chest near your heart. What we experience literally as heartache is the experience of power leaving in a fear or distrust through this energy center. Have you lost a mate or a child or someone very dear to you? Sort through your experience. Determine what you felt. You will discover that your body hurt, that you were in pain in the vicinity of your chest, that the experience of power leaving through that energy center, that is the experience of power leaving through that energy center. That is what heartache is, the loss of power through your heart center. Chronic or acute loss of power through the heart center results literally in an attack of the heart. There is more myocardial infarction to heart attack than cholesterol in the blood and other conditions in the physical system. Every distress and every dysfunction of the physical body, every illness can be understood in terms of power loss to an external circumstance or object through one of the several energy centers within the body. You lose power when you rage against an injustice. You lose power when you are threatened by another person. You lose power when you distance yourself from your fellow humans out of resentment or bitterness or a sense of disappointment or unworthiness or superiority. You lose power when you long for something or someone, when you grieve and when you envy another. Beneath all of these is fear that you are vulnerable, that you are not able to cope without the person or the situation that you miss, that you are at a disadvantage without that which you envy. You lose power whenever you fear. That is what a loss of power is. So by definition, this loss of power is an emotional thing. Our experience of life is emotional, primarily. I mean, we feel. What we want is the feeling of something, and what we try to avoid is the feeling of something we don't want. The heroin addict doesn't want the heroin. They want the feeling that the heroin gives them. When you fall in love with another person, you don't necessarily want the other person as much as you want the feeling that you have when you're with them. You come here on Sunday because you want the feeling that you get when you come here on Sunday, whatever that is. It could be inspiration and rejoicing. It could be the relief that you've met a commitment because you feel like you have to be here. So fear is all about the dissipation of energy. Love is about the accumulation of energy. And when you recognize and think from a perspective of love, which is empowerment, which is power, you realize that you have enough energy that you can give out as much as you want, and there's always an infinite supply. Fear feels there's a limitation of energy, not only within ourselves, but that we have to get it from outside. We've been having some interesting unfoldings on the ministers' listserv this week. That's our email thing that the ministers share. And without getting into all the details organizationally, there are some folks that when someone posts a fairly strong opinion, that's kind of a rant, which occurs occasionally, there are other people that come on and say, I really don't think I can stay on this listserv because it's so disturbing to have people give negative comments. And there are people you can see that they're checking out. They're not going to be on anymore. See, that speaks to power. If I'm so disturbed by the world that I have to hide from it, it becomes really difficult to engage. Now, that doesn't mean that there might not be some valid reason to say, hey, this is just not right. But on the other hand, why would you feel diminished by someone else's opinion or strongly stated words? Why would you feel wounded by it? See, the reaction has nothing to do with the original statement. The original statement simply triggered something that was already there. And what was already there was, I'm a fragile little flower and I can't take too much dissonance, or something will happen to me. And we get to be sensitive like that when we've lost a lot of power through fear. Now, the answer isn't to tell the person to, hey, buck up, you know, you're a minister, for God's sake, what's the matter with you? That just drives them further into the hole. See? The answer, I think, is to say, excuse me, but don't you realize that you're an empowered being, a divine being, that nothing outside of you can hurt you? Could you be with that for a few minutes? Ernest Holmes made an interesting statement late in his career, and it's in the Holmes Papers, which is some of his last lectures in the late 1950s. And a woman talked to him about being, I'm so sensitive, that I'm so afraid that someone's going to say something that hurts me deeply. And he said, and he was kind of getting to the point in life, I think he knew he was going to check out soon. And really, I think he did. And I think what happens with many teachers is they get a sense of urgency and they lose their patience to some extent. Jesus did this, by the way, in Gethsemane, okay? So it's not an unusual thing. And he said to the woman, dear, you have died but not yet laid down. Your sensitivity can be redeemed. You must heal it, or you will not be fit for this world. It was harsh. But telling her, oh, that's okay, dear, I'll change my whole style of speaking so you're not offended, is that a better answer? You know? What do we do in these situations? How do we get these sensitivities? Well, we get them because things happen and we interpret them in such a way that we feel diminished by them. And whenever something comes up that reminds us of our diminishment, we react. And we react in a way that uses the very power that could magnify our experience of life so beautifully to keep us feeling diminished. Because there's only one power going on here. There's not negative and positive power. It's only one power. He says, an authentically empowered human being is humble. See, what's humble mean? Well, I used to think humble meant being self-disparaging. You know, you put yourself down. And I looked it up, and humility, the main definition of humility is to live in truth. To live in truth. That's being humble. So I'm being humble when I say I'm magnificent beyond measure. I'm being humble when I say I am the sole authority in my own life. I'm being humble when I say I'm an amazing genius that is learning how to express myself more and more fully as I age. I'm being humble when I'm saying I'm whole, perfect, and complete. That I am healthy, wealthy, and wise. That's humility. But I need to believe it. See, that is the ultimate truth of our being. The ultimate truth of our being is we're scary smart and scary good and scary with the potential that we have. And to say I'm only is to buy into a diminished idea of self that isn't true. And that's not being humble. Some of us are very uncomfortable with talking well about ourselves, even to ourselves, because we were trained as a little kid. Let other people tell you good things about you. Don't you ever say it. And I found that growing up, there weren't a whole lot of other people that were telling me good things about me. Thank you. I remember my grandmother, who I called Nana. There were 3 cousins, 3 grandchildren. I could do no wrong. And actually, there were 4 grandchildren. I could do no wrong, and I remember she would always say that no matter what I did. Oh, it's Jim. I'm sure he had a good reason or something like that. And my parents and the aunts and uncles would just get on her, oh, your nana's taking care of you, that kind of thing. Trying to keep me from getting a swelled head, I guess. But it grew to 7 3/8 anyway. But we have these mixed messages as we grow up, and we don't know what we're internalizing at the time until it shows up later in life. So to be humble is to recognize that we are here as part of a divine unfolding of a universal wisdom that is beyond comprehension. We're not here to play small. We're not here to withhold and curl up into a ball and hope the world leaves us alone. We're here to get out and make the world what we know it can be. That's what we're here for. It is the inclusiveness of one who responds to the beauty of each soul. It is the harmlessness of one who treasures and honors and reveres life in all its forms. He's talking about the empowered personality or soul. We see the beauty in each person first. First. We see the interiority first. And it's the harmlessness of one who treasures and honors and reveres life. A truly humble spiritual person is harmless. Wounded people wound people. That's universally so. When you find out who you are spiritually, there's no desire to harm anyone else. There's no desire to do anything but be loving. Which is interesting when you look at a lot of religious people. But that's not their fault. That's where they've been led by those who were the influences in their lives. And any of us could just as easily be sitting in a fundamentalist church today as we are sitting here, based on the influences and decisions we've made and along the path. An authentically empowered human being is one who forgives. Forgiveness is not a moral issue, it's an energy dynamic. Because when I don't forgive, I hold it in. I activate the fear in my life. The I've been harmed and I've been wronged. The victim consciousness that is like a corrosive cancer that will eat you alive and your relationships. We have to be in a continual state of forgiveness because people are people. And I'm a people too. And so are you. So we have to be in a continual state of self-forgiveness because we're always doing something we didn't want to do. We're always making bad judgments or sometimes intentionally inflicting harm because we're hurt, we're wounded. So we have to begin to move beyond that by making forgiveness a part of our everyday. And we will do it imperfectly. But over time we get better and better at it. When you hold someone responsible for what you experience, you lose power. When you hold someone responsible for what you experience, you lose power. Gary Simmons puts it this way: who's the matter with you today? And it's not like you give the other person power. The other person's not even part of what's going on inside your head. You give your idea of the other person power and diminish your own. Again, using the same power that could empower you to help you feel diminished. An authentically empowered human being is clear in his or her perceptions and thinking. Clarity is the perception of wisdom. Clarity evaporates fear. Fear, the mnemonic I like for fear is false evidence appearing real. What am I afraid of? Am I afraid a terrorist is going to sneak into the house at night and target me because I'm so special? It's kind of, that's kind of arrogant, by the way, to think the terrorists are targeting you. If you're living in the White House, maybe, but, probably not in Simi Valley. I don't think that's a big target. But you know what I mean? We often think of ourselves as being the target of the venom of others or the intentions of others, and That's really being arrogant, not being humble, because it's not true. Clarity. Am I being clear? If I'm in fear, I'm not. Very simple. An authentically empowered human being lives in love. Love is the energy of the soul. Love is what heals the personality. There is nothing but love. Now, love can be hard to spot because we're immersed in it. We are it. It's like a fish looking for water. Two fish were having a conversation on the reef, and one fish said to the other, I heard there's this thing called water. And the other fish, I don't know what you're talking about. I've never seen it. And the other fish took off around the world to try to find water. And he showed up again about 5 years later. He was all battered up. He'd lost a fin. Part of his tail was bitten off. Had one eye. Had barnacles on him. And his friend says, is that you? Yeah, it's me. Did you find water? I said, nope. I don't believe in it anymore. Well, that's us looking for love, isn't it? You know, we think it's out there somewhere, but it doesn't seem to be around me right now, and it's what we are. Those fish and us are at least 75% water. We are 100% love. And we're looking for it outside. Would you love me? Would you love me? Would you love me? See? Rather than beginning within. I'm not going to do that reading. So, to conclude, what this book I think does is help us to delve into some of these ideas that are very important spiritual ideas from a principled standpoint. Who am I? I'm a soul having a human experience. What is my purpose? My purpose is to have the fullest, most joyful, most engaging, and contributory experience I can have. What if I've screwed up my life up to this point? Every moment is a new moment. See, we're not limited by what happened in the past. Do I have what I need to make my life go in this new, more powerful, more empowered direction? Yes. You have an imagination. That's all you need. One of the basic ideas in the science of mind philosophy is that spirit or God, or whatever term you want to use for it, is infinite, which means it's everywhere present all the time. Nothing can be added to an infinite. Creation is complete in the sense that it has everything it needs to continue to unfold. Think about it. The whole universe continues to unfold. Everything it needs is there. Why would you be any different? We have within us access to all the wisdom, all the courage, all the love, all the power, all the light that we need. We just have to be willing to engage it and bring it forth, and not be too concerned about how others react. In order to be spiritually aware, you have to be willing to be a little foolish. Okay, a lot foolish. That's okay. You know, it's okay. It's got to be okay. If we all have to conform, what's the point? So I hope you've enjoyed this series. I hope you found it compelling and enjoyable and inspiring, and I hope it's bothered you to some extent, because where you feel bothered is where your healing is ready to unfold. Thank you, and namaste.